Hello viewers, my name is Tyler Marchand, and I'm hoping you're all enjoying this new decade so far. Today I'm going to be talking about a year that I very much enjoyed listening to, namely 1985. And I'll just say that with a whopping 19 songs being discussed today, this video could wind up being pretty long. In some years that I have previously covered, there may have been 8 out of 10s that made the top 10 proper due to the year being relatively weak. This year, however, I find that in some cases, being even a 9 out of 10 isn't a guarantee that the song will make the list proper. 1985 was that great. And add to that, countless other songs that just barely missed the 8 out of 10 threshold for me, such as Out of Touch, Can't Fight This Feeling, Saving All My Love for You, Everything She Wants, We Belong, and Freedom. Since this video is already going to be long, I'm going to get my regretted omission, Walk of Life, out of the way and just start with the 9 honorable mentions. Out of the Madonna songs that I am familiar with, I'd say that my absolute favorite is Into the Groove, but somehow that song wasn't a year-end hit. And then we have this, a very close second. Now, while I do hear this song today, it's one of the first Madonna songs I'd been introduced to, as my mother had this song, as well as 1995's Take a Bow on her iPod, which she would listen to while in her car. During that time, as a kid, I've always grown to really like this love song, with excellent strings instrumentation and fantastic vocal performance. This song is great. Now comes potentially the most controversial inclusion in this list. Okay, bear with me on this one. From the very few lists I've seen about the worst of 1985, namely from Nerd with an Afro and a since-removed video from The Double Agent, the modestly sized The Search Is Over is a common entry on such lists. I personally don't see how the song is that bad, but this song tends to get glossed over by people analyzing the best and the worst. My whole exposure to this song comes from its feature in Paul Blart Mall Cop. Yeah, I may have been 13 years old when I got it on DVD, and it really isn't that good. But it had an impact on me, and I was always drawn to it. Yes, it is very much a power ballad, but I argue that it is one done well. And while on the topic of songs that I was introduced to through the movies, okay, I should rephrase that. I've never seen the second Alvin and the Chipmunks movie. I've only seen the trailer where this song is played as the Chipmunks first meet the Chipettes, their love interests. But enough about bad movies. We'll get to better ones later, but for now, this song is vastly different from almost everything else Foreigner is known for, and it gave them their biggest hit. Or second biggest. Maybe the 2.5 months their other signature song spent at number 2 added up more than this song's time at number 1. Even then, this song is fantastic, mostly driven by Lou Graham's vocal performance, which culminates with a choir to end off the song. I tend to hear this song very frequently, and I enjoy every second of it. I said that this is about the time when simply being nearly flawless won't be enough to make my top 10 proper, and believe me, I'm as shocked as anyone that this song isn't there. And there are more songs coming up that for almost any other year, they'd be very high on my list, if not squatting at the number 1 spot. But for now, this is a song where nobody cares about the lyrics, because the main draw of the song is, of course, that finger-picked guitar riff from Mark Knopfler, who very much had to have been an influence on Brad Paisley's style of guitar playing. I mean, you also, not to mention that little synth intro that leads into the riff. It is songs like these that make me wish that I had taken up guitar. Well, I can still rely on Guitar Hero for good fun with this basically perfect riff. Only in the 80s can a song from a musical about chess become a hit. With the new wave instrumentation that utilizes sounds that you would get from Southeast Asia, the rap talking verses from the perspective of a chess player visiting Thailand for a tournament, and that flat-out earworm chorus from the perspective of a local trying to get the player to look at more than a board of plastic pieces. Like pretty much every other song on this list, this is a bona fide classic. If you aren't familiar with the song, check it out. You won't regret it. This decade is a time when even below average films can produce above average soundtrack hits. I've never seen St. Elmo's Fire. My understanding is that it is a disappointment from John Hughes. Perhaps the one thing that people acknowledge as the best part of the film was the soundtrack hit. And yes, this is quite the anthem. Driven by the hard rock instrumentation and yet another earworm of a chorus, this is one of those songs that I hear sporadically, but you can bet that whenever I do hear, I'll be coming alive. After The Sweetest Taboo just missed my 1986 video, I was looking forward to Sade's signature hit song, and boy is it a smooth jam. The vocal performance just mixes in perfectly with the infectious sax instrumentation. There will be more of that coming ahead, spoiler alert, along with an instrumental interlude mixing the saxophone with funk guitars, making this an R&B track that if it were to be played in Reno, I'd be very pleased. Okay, it seems to be popular to bash on Bryan Adams for his ballads, especially those from the 90s. Needless to say, he doesn't seem to be popular amongst the reviewing community, but some are willing to give him a pass for his earlier work, especially around this time frame. I personally don't hate Heaven, and despite the lyrical content, I do like Run to You. This is unfiltered awesomeness, reflecting on a summer of lovemaking accented with fantastic guitar instrumentation. I mean, how do you say no to something like that? Like I said, this tends to be the exception when talking about Bryan Adams' catalog, but for those who are still uneasy, give the song a chance. You'll find yourself surprised. Alright, this is a song that I've known about for a while, but I forgot that it was done by the Eurythmics, the same act that made some synth-pop classics that I will be getting to in future videos. In short, I was surprised when I found out this rocking song was made by the same group that was behind Here Comes the Rain Again and Sweet Dreams. Of course, the song also features a very strong vocal performance from Annie Lennox, as she demonstrates raw vocal power here. I will be seeking this song out more often. Okay, those were my honorable mentions. With some true classics not making the top 10 proper, I think you're all in for a treat with the songs that actually stood head and shoulders above everything else from this golden year. Let's get started with number 10. And we're starting out this list with a song that has started getting some major airplay where I live, seemingly more so than another, potentially more obvious candidate. But who really cares when the song is this awesome? I sure don't. pop duo of Andrew Ridgeley and, more famously, George Michael had their peak this year with their fair share of smash hits throughout 1985's year-end chart. And with this song that was obviously inspired by the music from a quarter century earlier, this was one of the year's signature songs. Saxophone instrumentation makes this song instantly catchy. And I can guarantee you that when you hear this song, you will have it stuck in your head for a long, long time. Do the jitterbug. Okay, sorry about that. Number 9. Okay, I was fearing that this day would come. It is one thing when a certain estate tries to block my video for using one of their songs. That very well may happen with this video, but I'll cross that bridge when I get there. But it is another when the estate is so overprotective of their products that the original songs are nowhere to be found on YouTube. So, for this entry, I apologize, but I'm going to have to resort to using a live version of this song from about the time that it was big. So here we go. Throughout the 80s, Glenn Frey and Don Henley of the Eagles had successful solo careers. I think it is fair to say that 1985 was the peak for both men, as Glenn Frey had major success with soundtrack songs from Miami Vice. All involved songs just barely missed the 8 out of 10 threshold, by the way, and while Don Henley wasn't as huge at the moment, his music has endured for longer, with this being his signature hit. Like Summer of '69, it is a reminiscing track about a romance that somehow faded, accented with longing keys instrumentation. Sporadic guitar work, especially towards the end. And Don Henley's vocal performance. Again, I apologize for having to resort to alternative media for this song, but I have to do what I have to do to bring you guys the stuff that you come to rely from me. Number 8. Okay, now we can get back to using the actual song clips this time. What's next? One of my favorites from that 80s phase I went through during my senior year of high school. Tears for Fears were a new wave group that have been successful throughout the 80s and even into the early 90s, and they even made the original Mad World that was popularized by Gary Jules in 2003. However, about all anyone remembers of them was their 1985 output, specifically the 3 songs that made that year-end list. This was the smallest of those 3 songs, but I've always loved this love song with gorgeous piano and guitar instrumentation. Where I live, this song does frequently get played, and that is something that really makes me happy, since this song is awesome. Number 7. Due to the fact that visibility of my 1986 video was delayed due to a copyright claim, not many people may have actually seen that video, and I understand. In that video, I sort of alluded to this entry when talking about Invisible Touch in my honorable mention segment, and now you know for sure what is coming. During my 80s phase around 2013-2014, Phil Collins was one of those acts that I got into while just randomly exploring hits from that area. Around that time, my favorite from him was Against All Odds, but this duet with Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind & Fire fame was very high up there as well. The solo work of the Genesis frontman was typically in the soft rock vein, but this song, warning you of a manipulative woman, is different. perhaps due to the fact that Philip Bailey was a member of one of the 70s signature dance acts, this song has that dance track feel to it, accented by heavy guitars. And even a kick-ass guitar solo. Back in the mid-2010s, this song was still played very frequently. It isn't played as much today, but I still hear it enough to keep me satisfied. Number 6. And now for the entry that will inevitably cause viewability of this video to be delayed until Saturday the 11th at the earliest. Fucking copyright bots. This era was also the peak era for the artist formerly known as Prince. The guy was pretty colorful, something that becomes obvious when you notice a pattern of his song titles like Little Red Corvette, Purple Rain, and this, Raspberry Beret. Since this is a Prince song, the lyrics are obviously about an eccentric lady that catches his eye. One of those songs that demonstrates Prince's chops as a guitarist, this song is all kinds of fantastic, and the fact that it is only at number 6 should tell you about my thoughts regarding my top 5. Number 5. It's been taking a while. We're now getting to the point in time where the most popular music videos of the 1980s are starting to close in on the 1 billion view mark. Thus far, the only one to cross that threshold is Guns N' Roses' Sweet Child of Mine, but this entry will very soon be the second. Fuck. Why does this keep happening to me? Seriously, god fucking damn it. You would think that I would learn to find the correct videos before filming these lists, right? Anyways, I was initially very surprised to find out that this song, as of today, is less than 20 million views away from the coveted 1 billion views club. But then again, considering that the music video, done almost completely in comic book style, is almost as iconic as the song itself, I shouldn't have been that surprised. But you're all here to hear me talk about the song, I know. This is about the only thing anyone knows about from the Nordic synth-pop group a-ha. But when you have a synth-pop song this iconic, I mean, if you want to know how iconic it is, just go back and listen to that synth line that was obviously stolen by Pitbull 6-7 years ago. I mean, when you have a synth-pop song this iconic, I'd be surprised if I find someone who hasn't heard of this song at some point. But the question is, how do you better this? I don't see how they could have potentially bettered this song, but we are still left with a song that will remain timeless. Number 4. Okay, that was probably a surprise having that masterpiece in at only number 5. I mentioned this earlier. The fantastic songs from this year were on a whole different level in terms of quality, which is why all but maybe 2 or 3 of the songs on this list are all still aired regularly in a fast-growing urban area approaching 500,000 strong. So, what do I have as higher than Take On Me? First off, we have a song that sounds like it was inspired by George Orwell. Again, Tears for Fears were relatively big this year. Out of their 3 main hit songs from this year, this was the biggest, being a year-end top 10 hit. Like Head Over Heels, this song is still heard from time to time, but I wish it were heard a lot more often. Remember what I said about George Orwell? Well, even though Kurt Smith from the duo says the song concerns the fears of nuclear war, and while I do see how the lyrics can be read that way, I always heard 1984 when I listened to this song. By the way, that's a book that I read in my senior year of my high school, and interestingly, the album that the song was featured on, Songs from the Big Chair, was released in 1984. I'm sorry, I had to do that. The specific line I turned to for my reasoning comes during that first bridge. This specific line I turned... For those who are familiar with 1984, you'll see this as the moment when Winston's and Julia's love story comes to an end thanks to the all-seeing eye of Big Brother. Oh, and the instrumentation of this song is also awesome. Okay, now that I've red-pilled anyone who has been listening to me, let's finish our discussion of Tears for Fears with number 3. While this song was the middle track in terms of relative success from 1985, at least where I live, it has become the most heard song I hear from this British duo, despite the fact that it clocks in at 6.5 minutes. By the way, the last 2 songs also have versions that clock in at about 6.5 minutes. Like Everybody Wants to Rule the World, this song has lyrics talking about anxiety from the Cold War, which at this point had been going on for 40 years, but soon to end, and encouraging the public to take a stance. But I've always been attracted to this song for the instrumentation that comes in interesting flourishes, especially during the 2 breakdowns. The first one featuring 3 unique segments with horns and synth pianos. And that final one being a guitar breakdown. Unfortunately, for most of the time press stations in Reno, it is from these bits that the song gets cut down to a more manageable 4.5 minutes. Even if you take those out, the song's still awesome, by the way. Overall, Tears for Fears are what I would call a one-year wonder, as despite the fact that they've had success outside of 1985, their trifecta from this year is what people remember from them. Number 2. Okay, I'm going to give you a countdown indicated by my fingers at a certain moment when the sample starts playing. When it reaches 0, you should know what to do. Alright. See how it goes. You'd better have fist pumped when I instructed you to, as what else are you supposed to do when listening to this? For those of you who have the misfortune of not knowing what that was all about, this is the soundtrack song to John Hughes' The Breakfast Club, a coming-of-age film about 5 teens from different walks of life who get to know each other and themselves during 8 hours of Saturday detention. This song fits in with the film perfectly, as the lyrics entail the narrator trying to get to know someone else, and once the getting to knowing is done, he wants there to be a connection that will endure, hopefully past the coming Monday, if you're following. It is truly impossible for me to forget about the keys instrumentation that drives this song, but I've always loved the drum work the best, especially with that before that iconic breakdown to close the song out. As often as I hear this, I was honestly prepared to make this my number 1 for 1985, but at the end of the day, I just couldn't. Why? Number 1. As much as Don't You Forget About Me is immortal in my eyes, there's just no way that I could have justified placing this lower than number 1. I've kept you guessing for a while now, but the torment is finally over. Yes, of course we're going to be finishing off this top 10 proper where it all began. Ladies and gentlemen, the biggest hit song of 1985, and as amazing as pretty much every other entry on this list was, were I there while my parents were in middle school, I wouldn't have had it any other way. Where do I even begin? Well, of course I have to start with that iconic saxophone intro. Anyone who thinks of this truly phenomenal introduction as anything less than flawless should not be allowed to procreate. Period. It's just so sexy.
What the hell did you say?
Saxy. I said saxy. Although George Michael has admitted that he never felt a connection to the lyrical content, he pulls off the delivery of a person who feels true guilt after being unfaithful perfectly. Everything about this song is flawless, and I would be doing Careless Whisper a huge disservice if I made it anything less than my pick for the best hit song of 1985. Well, that was my list. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, subscribe to my channel for notifications of new material, share this video so that I can grow my base, and as always, leave a comment down below. As usual, I ask that the comments stay civilized. Next up, I'll be making my list for the best hit songs of 1984, another one of the golden years of pop music. I expect that video to be out on Sunday, January 26th. Stay tuned for that date. Until then, I'm Tyler Marchand saying, I'm never gonna dance again the way I dance with you.